Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back again. So we're going to continue to go through Judges a little bit. I have written down here on the board how they're divided out throughout the book of Judges. They're divided up into different periods. You see a lot of different names here. Othniel being the first one. We got Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah, Barak, Gideon, Tola, Jair, Jephthah, Ebzan, Elon, Abdon, and most notably Samson. There are a few that have little marks next to them, and those are examples where these folks have a little bit more expansive description of their time, the period of time where they were leading. But all of these folks are important because they're all part of the means that God used to bring Israel back to Him. Last week we talked about how they'd fall into this pattern where, as the generations passed away from Moses and Jacob, folks that witnessed the work of God directly, or at least had very close secondhand knowledge of what happened, they start to get complacent. They start to forget why it was that they were doing the things that they were doing. But over time, this just happened again and again and again. And so God would raise up these people to kind of bring these folks back to Him. And I know the emphasis last week when I was talking was, just more of a punishment and reeling us back in, right? This concept of we got to do right, or else God just delivers us to the hands of these wicked people for a time, and then He raises up a judge to deliver them. Well, the big message in there, and the message that ties into Jesus Christ's sacrifice, is that every time, no matter how bad they got, no matter how much they were worshiping Baal and Asherah, falling into the idolatry and the sinful lives of the cultures that they were around and they had amongst themselves, no matter how many times, He still sent somebody when His people cried out to deliver them. So that overall is a very hopeful and positive message. So I don't want you guys to be going through this thinking this is all doom and gloom, but read the Judges with a mind of deliverance and hope for what God's going to do, and have your mind set that way when we go through these things. I think it'll help keep it in context of the bigger picture of God's story of His people, which we have in the Bible. So just real quick, we're in Judges chapter 3, verse 7. This is kind of starting it off. This is Othniel. It says, "The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel so that He sold them into the hands of the Cushan Rishathaim king Aram Naharaim, to whom the Israelites were subject for 8 years. But when they cried out to the Lord, He raised up for them a deliverer, Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, who saved them. The Spirit of the Lord came on him so that he became Israel's judge and went to war. The Lord gave Cushan Rishathaim, king of Aram, into the hands of Othniel, who overpowered him. So the land had peace for 40 years, until Othniel, son of Kenaz, died." So the people fell into this pattern, but they cried out, and the Lord answered their cry. He sent them somebody who He blessed, who His hand was with, in order to free them from what they were doing, in order to restore them. And they did well. And you see it says in verse 11, "So the land had peace for 40 years until Othniel, son of Kenaz, died." And so there's that same pattern. Jacob died, people fell into sin and temptation, and they were delivered. And then Othniel led them for a long time. And then he passed away. And you can imagine, since we have all of these periods, that they just continue to follow the same pattern. And we similarly fall into a same pattern where we're obedient for a time. We're in the Word, we're in fellowship, we're reading and talking and praying regularly, and then the world kind of grabs a hold of us. All the things that the world tells us are important and need our attention, or all the things that we just find entertaining and end up prioritizing over things. And we get into this complacency period. Being complacent is just kind of being comfortable in your situation, not really being all that mindful of what's going on and not being very deliberate in what we do. So you kind of get comfortable and get in a routine, and then it's just one day after the other just kind of passes by, not being intentional, not growing our relationships, not talking to one another in a meaningful way. You can have all the conversations you want about this video game or that, or a sporting team, or motorcycles or cars, which is wonderful because they're your interest and they're important. But there's a lot going on in the world, and we got to help one another out, help each other to understand how to deal and how to cope with this. And we don't do that by ourselves. And we certainly can't get complacent in a time like this. It's a time like this where we should be out crying out to the Lord for deliverance, because it seems like we've been handed over into the hands of the enemy for a time. And so it's going to take all of us to come together, lift our voices to God, and get us out of that. Back in the Old Testament, in this book, in this time period, the Lord sent judges to correct this. So what kind of patterns do you think you can pick out in your own lives that might be similar to what I was talking about, being complacent? Think about how you spend your day, especially now when we can't really go anywhere. Things are limited, so we're spending a lot of time at home with the same people, and I bet you're probably, just like most folks, chasing distractions, trying to get your mind away from what's happening and kind of be in a better place for a while. But I encourage you to think of something, anything meaningful to have discussions about. Talk about the judges. Ask one another, is this a time like in the Old Testament where we need a judge? If so, if we were in that time, what would that judge look like? What are some things that you think, based on what you know about God and about Jesus Christ and about yourselves, what would they do? What would their intervention look like? How would they come and break this chain of going from obedience for a time to complacency, to outright sinfulness and idol worship, and get back here, get back up top, up here to God? So as we go through, we're going to touch on each of these that have a bigger story. There are stories that you have heard before, so it's not going to be anything surprising, but part of the reason for this is, one, to continue to read the story and experience the story, because every time you do it, if you're attentive, if you're not complacent and just reading through it, if you're intentional and really reading with a clear mind and a heart that's open to what God would tell you, you're going to pick up something new each time you read these stories. So we'll go through and we'll talk about Deborah and Gideon and Samson, just because they have a little bit more information, but also I'm not going to pick apart each little one because it would take a long time, and it's just, again, repeating a cycle. So we'll touch on the things that make these folks a little bit different, and then we'll move on to something else. So I hope you all are at home, watching, listening. I said, have your ears open, your eyes open, and your heart open for what the Lord will do in you in this time to get us moving forward. Continue to build your relationship with the Lord and with each other. Really looking forward so much to the day where I'm not talking to a camera, and we can, be together looking at this board and writing on this board together and laughing and goofing off again too. It's odd and echoey in an empty classroom. So, but just like in these stories, we're all just lifting our hands up to God and praying for Him to deliver us from this time, and we do so in faith and with hope, knowing that when we lift these things up to Him in God's time, with God's will, it will be done, and we just have to get through it together and pull one another through. So I can't wait to see you guys again, hopefully soon. We'll see what schools are doing and how we can proceed. Just keep praying that this passes us by and we can get back together again, okay? I love you guys, and we'll see you soon, okay?